If you're anything like me, you'd think that the ratbags and vandals behind Extinction Rebellion need to be held to account. I'll remind you, they're the mob who glue themselves to roads and buildings. They splash paints on works of art and do everything they can to disrupt the lives of law-abiding citizens, or to save the planet or some bunny or something. And when they're actually held to account, more often than not, they get a legal slap on the wrist and told not to do it again. Well, that could be about to change with a new bill introduced to Parliament by Senator Alex Antic. I'm delighted to say the Senator that joins me now from Canberra. Senator, this bill is a good and very necessary move. What are the new offences that you're proposing?
Well, thanks, Cory. Look, it really is. I think Australians are fed up to the back teeth, frankly, with seeing these scenes on our streets. In South Australia, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen protests really disrupting the Santos tour down under. Similar scenes we've seen everywhere. We've seen people across the world throwing paint at paintings, gluing themselves to Picassos. People have had enough. Now, you might remember in the last term of Parliament, the Liberal government, the Liberal National Government, passed some laws which dealt with agricultural trespass laws and most importantly, amendments to the criminal code, federal criminal code, which made it an offence for the preparatory act. So it's always been an offence to trespass, it's always been an offence to damage property. But what that bill did was it introduced legislation which basically made it an offence to prepare for. So that's using a telecommunication service, might be email, might be WhatsApp, might be something else. This is what I'm proposing here with this bill. 3 new categories of offences for incitement, effectively. What they would seek to do is anyone who's involved in the deliberate planning of trespass, property damage or disrupting traffic would find themselves falling afoul of these new 3 offences if the bill is passed. So there's no clamping down on protest. That's always going to remain an integral part of our democracy. There's no clamping down on public interest, journalism, whatever it might be. But if you're someone who is organising with a team, and often for every one person that turns up to glue themselves to the road, there'll be many, many more who are behind the scenes organising. For the first time, if this bill were to pass, those offences would capture all of the people involved in this nonsense.
All right, Senator, this sounds like common sense to me, but there has been some pushback from sections of the freedom community, as I refer to them. What's actually their beef? I mean, they've conjured up images of that pregnant lady who was arrested by Dan Andrews' mob during the COVID things for Facebook posts. And if they're upset with you for doing this, who's actually going to be supporting this sort of bill?
Well, look, I hope all sides of Parliament support it. I hope the Greens and Labor support it, frankly, because it's a real statement about law and order. And look, yeah, there has been some criticism about all that. I know people are particularly touchy about the subject of protest, particularly over the last 2 years when I've been very sympathetic with the freedom protests. I think I was one of the only coalition senators to speak at one of the freedom protests in Adelaide. None of that would be affected by this bill, Cory. All this bill seeks to do is to look at acts of criminal conduct, that is, gluing yourself to things, throwing paint at things, all of those sorts of things. None of the acts that I could see in the freedom protest over the last couple of years would have offended that. And so preparing for those sorts of protests behind the scenes also wouldn't be affected. So there's really nothing to be alarmed about that. I agree, and I'm probably like you, I'm always there for less regulation, less government, less involvement from the criminal law if possible. But look, we've had enough of this. Australians need to see some action on this. There will be a series of further protests that are going to happen, and enough's enough.